Good evening and welcome everyone to Dunscore Church's Eco Group's second hustings event, albeit it is very different this year from the one we had 5 years ago. And this evening we welcome the following candidates: Oliver Mundell from the Conservative Party, Colin Smith, Labour Party, Laura Moody from the Green Party, Richard Brodie, Liberal Democrats, and Joan McAlpine, Scottish National Party. The main thrust of this evening's hustings is about each party's environmental policies and how Scotland should respond to the climate crisis in this year of COP26. And on that note, I am delighted to introduce the Reverend David Coleman, who is the Environmental Chaplain for Eco Congregation Scotland. So over to you, David, and thank you.
Thank you, Yvonne. Good to be back, as it were. This is the year when the UK as a whole and Scotland in particular are on display to the rest of the human world. We're playing host to one of the most ponderous of global talking shops, which we shorthand as COP. Now, we'd be here all night explaining all the letters and things, but it's the United Nations Climate Conference. While we're on shorthand, often when we use the word climate, we mean thereby the whole interwoven stack of environmental crises. Every walk of life, every sector of activity without exception really has to change to acknowledge this. Though do bear in mind that life might end up as a result cleaner, healthier, better, happier, rather than just harder. This crisis has emerged through a just-use planet could still be imagined when the population of our species is approaching 8 billion. But don't blame the poor when the education of women is shown to result in rising welfare and falling birth rates. Overseas aid could cut the carbon footprint of a nation like ours. Now, horror films love to use the word biblical to describe catastrophe that gets out of hand. They are not wrong. This is what the Bible was written for, and in common with most great faith traditions of humanity, a spiritual approach is one which provides wisdom and resilience as well as realism. That, in a way, I suppose, is what we're doing tonight, bringing the worst things in the world openly to light on holy ground. When I offered time for reflection at the Scottish Parliament, the MSP who invited me actually spent 20 minutes establishing his environmental credentials. Bless him. But it is for the voters to convince politicians, few of whom are badly informed, to act for the common good. Climate knows no boundaries, either at Gretna Green or the coast. We are aware through aid agencies of refugees around the world seeking sanctuary from the environmental and social effects of climate change. Are these human beings entitled to our help or not? I suppose the best outcome of this election is a parliament and government that tells the truth about challenges and challenges the people where there is a need for powerful truth. The best outcome of this evening is that someone, again, with no exceptions on the platform, actually does change their mind or shift their position. Maybe we should proceed with a minute of silence to let the spirit of wisdom get in, but do not ever confuse procrastination and hesitation with wisdom. Everything is much more urgent than anyone's likely to describe tonight.
Thank you very much, David. It was great that David agreed to come along tonight, and it's obviously a great privilege to have him just to speak to us briefly. I'm just going to do a quick introduction about Zoom this evening and how all the kind of mechanics are going to work, because obviously it's a little bit different. First of all, welcome everybody, and it's great to see so many people here. We've got 46 screens going on, which for Dunscore is pretty amazing. Everybody's going to be muted throughout the evening, apart from obviously in the breakout rooms where chat is the order of the evening. But apart from that, and those that are speaking, you will be muted. We've asked each of the candidates to speak for just 2 minutes on their environmental policies, and we'll be keeping them to that. Be prepared, candidates. We are recording, as you should have noticed, so if you don't want to appear on a recording, because we'll be sharing this later on YouTube, if you don't appear on the recording, please switch off your camera. The candidates have all been asked to speak on the party's environmental policies and how Scotland should respond to the climate crisis in this year of COP26. So that's what we will be hearing from 2 minutes on each of them. We won't actually have any questions at this time during, after the candidates have spoken, but we will obviously have the breakout rooms, which is a great opportunity for you to ask questions then. I'm going to explain the breakout rooms when we get to that point of the evening. So if you bear with me, I'll just talk you through that a little bit later on. But we'll now come on to the candidates, the first of whom is Oliver Mundell. The way that we'll do this is I'll spotlight the candidate. If they can then unmute themselves and get going, I will start timing the 2 minutes. And I will let you know, candidates, when you've reached a point very near to the 2 minutes, if you haven't stopped by that point. So I shall just, first of all, find Oliver. Sam, if you can spot him, then I found him, it's all right. So if you just want to get going whenever you're ready, once you're up on the screen, which you are now.
I'm just unmuting myself. Thank you, first of all, to Yvonne, Matthew, David, and everyone involved in organising it, and everyone who's given up their evening to come along. I'm really pleased to have the opportunity to take part. And it's nice to actually have a hustings that's focused on a particular issue, because often with these things move on so quickly, you don't really get a chance to delve into the detail. And climate and the environment is definitely top of everyone's agenda. And it's a really important opportunity actually for all parties and all politicians to work together, because as we heard in the introduction, it's not something that that we can afford to argue about. We've got to get on and act. And I think one of the things I would observe is by having this event yourself and all of the work, the fantastic work you do in Dunscore, you're already making a difference. And you're often, by being the change that we want to see, and with the climate and environment, it can feel hopeless at an individual level. But I very strongly believe, if we're going to get on top of this crisis, if we're going to save our planet, then we all have to be willing to make changes in our own lives. So from the Conservative point of view, I think there are three kind of key things I would highlight at this stage. The first being, if we want to reduce carbon emissions in rural areas, we've got to help and support rural businesses and farmers to make changes. But I think that's got to be a balanced approach between helping people improve what they do where they can, but also recognising that simply outsourcing our food production to other parts of the world that often have lower standards than our own is not going to solve anything. And I believe very strongly.
Oliver.
Sorry?
Nearly time.
I believe very strongly that farmers do want to make a difference. And I think the other two things I'd highlight very quickly is it's not just about carbon emissions, but we've also got to protect nature and conserve what we have. And the Scottish Conservatives support a bill to help support our natural environment and protect the 1 in 9 species in Scotland that face extinction. And locally here in Dumfries and Galloway, we're championing a new national park in Galloway, which is a real opportunity to start doing some of that work here in our region. And I hope those are things that the other parties can support as well. And I'm interested to hear what everyone's got to say tonight, because I think it's something we can work together on.
Thanks very much, Oliver. That was 2 minutes and a little bit. So we'll be slightly generous with the rest of you. So thank you very much for that. Now heading over to Colin Smith. So Colin, I see you've unmuted. Thank you. So if you want to just get going whenever you are ready. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Matthew, and good evening, everyone. It's fantastic to see so many familiar faces, sadly, virtually as opposed to in person. And I know the last year has been really tough, that we've all missed out physically coming together. We've been separated from our loved ones, and tragically we've seen so many lives and livelihoods being lost. So my party makes no apology for our view that in this election and the priority we believe for the next Parliament must be on delivering a national recovery. And at its heart, we believe, as we'll set out in our manifesto this Thursday, must be a climate recovery plan which seeks to bring together the need to support our economy and create green jobs in the aftermath of the pandemic with the urgent need to tackle the climate crisis that we face. So what does this mean in practice? Well, it means, for example, improving energy efficiency across Scotland by upgrading all our homes to at least energy efficiency rating C or higher by 2030. It means investing in Scotland's natural environment, planting at least 15,000 hectares of trees and restoring 20,000 hectares of peatland. It means creating real change in our business community, for example, requiring a clear carbon reduction plan and a commitment to achieving net zero from businesses that want to work with the public sector. It means ensuring a just transition to a net zero through a just transition commission. And it means creating greener communities by investing in better bus and rail services and setting aside at least 10% of our transport budget for active travel. As we've heard already this evening, COP26 is coming to Glasgow in November, and I hope that history will look back at a world saved by an agreement from world leaders struck here in our own shores. But the first step we can take is, I believe, doing a lot more at home. We have clear targets in Scotland for net zero emissions, and a lot of people will argue we need to go further. But what we don't have yet are the policies in place to meet those targets. So Labour's clear and I'm clear. We need to use the next 5 years to set out those policies and deliver that net zero emission that will ultimately tackle the climate emergency. Thanks very much.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Colin. So we now move to Laura Moody for the Scottish Greens. If you want to just unmute, thanks. Well, and Laura, thanks. And off you go whenever you're ready.
Thanks, Matthew. It's never been more important to vote like our future depends on it. We have fewer than 9 years left to tackle the climate crisis and build a fairer and greener Scotland as we recover from the COVID pandemic. And that relies on investing in a green recovery that benefits all of us. The Scottish Greens are proposing a £10 billion investment plan to boost the building of green infrastructure like renewable energy, rail and warm homes, and create at least 100,000 jobs across Scotland. And we've put tackling the climate and nature emergencies at the heart of all of our proposals. Transport is the largest source of Scotland's emissions, and they are rising. During the last Parliament, Green MSP secured free bus travel for everyone under 22, which starts this summer. That will have a huge impact on the lives of young people and indeed on families like my own, and help build a culture of public transport across Scotland. Rail for All, our ambitious 20-year, £22 billion programme to give Scotland a modern, fast and zero carbon railway, encapsulates the ambition of what the Greens are trying to achieve for everyone in Scotland. It's radical investment-led solutions like this that will transform Scotland and improve the economy and people's quality of life, as well as reducing emissions. As host nations, the Scottish and UK governments must bring much more than targets to the table at COP26 if it's to be a success. The last COP failed because we allowed sponsors to dictate the terms. Allowing powerful vested interests from the most damaging industries to lobby such a critical international summit would be dangerous when we're rapidly running out of time. We have to make the Glasgow COP as inclusive as possible for the most affected people and places who are at the front line of dealing with the impacts of the climate emergency. The science is clear. We have until 2030 to tackle the climate emergency and keep our planet safe for us, our children and future generations.
Really time up.
Thanks to the Greens, Scotland has ambitious targets, but we need bold action by government to deliver them so we can lead Europe in tackling this. So at this election, vote like our future depends on it and vote Green.
Great, thank you, Laura. So we've now got Richard Brodie from the Scottish Liberal Democrats. On you go whenever you're ready, Richard.
Hi all, it's great to be at my second Dunscore Eco Hustings. I learned a lot last time. It certainly catalysed me into taking climate issues seriously on D&G Council, being one of the 4 councils driving the council's operations to carbon neutrality by 2025. And I'm also in West Strands fighting with laughable resources to maintain some semblance of rural transport, introducing electric and ultra-low emission buses, promoting cycling and connectivity, and campaigning also for train stations to open at Thornhill, Eastriggs, Meetick and Langham. Now, the Lib Dem manifesto fully addresses climate change, and it includes 100% of Scottish energy being generated from renewables by 2030. And locally, that gives us opportunities at Chapel Cross to produce hydrogen for diverse energy needs. And also, I've been long in favour of a tidal electrical bridge between Anne and Cumbria to produce low-cost energy. We want to make district heating the norm. That would mean Bury of Dumfries tapping into its unique hot water aquifer to heat the town's homes. We would also create 34,000 jobs in energy efficiency, transforming 1 million homes to zero emissions by 2030. Also, electric cars need a network of rapid chargers for electric vehicles, and we want to invest in new skills to support transition from fossil fuel, which will be difficult for some industries. We also want to put nature at the heart of tackling climate change. And we want to address the fact of the loss of species in Scotland, which Oliver Mundell mentioned. We support new national parks, such as and we want to incentivise sustainable farming to tackle climate change. Foster biodiversity through restoration of peatlands and woodland. We want 30% of all public land should be used for rewilding. And finishing on a big note, we want to take the economic and environmental benefits from a circular economy, and that's at the heart of Lib Dem policies. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Richard. So we now head to Joan McAlpine for the Scottish National Party. So Joan, if you want to just unmute and start whenever you are ready. Thanks.
Thank you very much, and thank you to everyone who's attending and everyone who is involved in organising this event tonight. Under the SNP, Scotland was the first country to declare a climate emergency, the first in the world. We also have the most ambitious carbon reduction targets in the world. We aim to reach net zero by 2045, ahead of the rest of the UK. And we will show that leadership on the global stage when we host COP26. And of course, under the leadership of Nicola Sturgeon, we will deliver. We understand that the climate crisis hits the poorest in the world hardest, and that's why we will double our Climate Justice Fund, which has helped the poorest communities, including in sub-Saharan Africa, for example, through tree planting and accessing clean water. We have a plan to achieve our ambitious net zero target with a 1.6 billion investment in the next Parliament. This includes decarbonising the heating of 1 million homes by 2030. We'll invest 10% of the transport budget in active travel. We'll create a £500 million bus fund using green vehicles, which will also increase connectivity in rural areas. We'll create a £1 million green jobs fund and invest in hydrogen technology. And we'll invest 500 million improving biodiversity, including the restoration of peatlands, which is already underway, and preserving ancient woodlands, a subject close to my heart as I am the species champion of the Scots pine. Our single-use plastics deposit return scheme, which was held up by the pandemic, will be rolled out really soon, the first in the UK, and similar to some progressive European countries who are already doing this. We will also introduce a circular economy bill that will pioneer the reuse of other materials, such as cutting down on the use of textiles in fast fashion. The SNP and government have legislated to keep pace with Europe's high environmental standards despite Brexit. However, the UK Internal Market Bill threatens to make Scottish environmental laws null and void. We must protect our environment by maintaining and strengthening Scotland's relationship with our EU partners with a view to rejoining as soon as possible. And that will only be possible if Scotland becomes an independent country. And when the pandemic has passed, We want to give people in Scotland a democratic choice to vote for a better future for our people and for our environment. Thank you very much.